CNBC-TV18, embarking on a quarter century of excellence.
Welcome back. Here with us on Closing Bell. Time to introduce our next guest on the show. Vaibhav Sanghavi, CEO, ASK Hedge Solutions, is with us. Vaibhav, great to have you on. Thank you very much for joining in. Season's greetings. I actually want to ask you about your party plans for the 31st, but we will talk markets as well. But it's really been one big party this year, hasn't it? And December is ending off in style. The question is, will the party continue?
Of course, Surabhi. I think, first of all, season's greetings to all of the investors and the viewers. But, as you rightly mentioned, I mean, markets are in a party mode for last 2 months at least, especially, post-election results. The performance has kind of amplified in terms of the movement. Having said that, in the whole year of 20% movement, 13% has came in last 2 months. Now, this also, to an extent, kind of, I would say, discount the probability or higher probability of the continuance in terms of the current dispensation, from an election standpoint. At the same time, from a global perspective, I think, we are in a Goldilocks situation where the interest rates are kind of have topped out, and we would be looking at, rates coming down by mid next year. At the same time, from a local perspective, the earnings momentum continue to be buoyant. Now, because of all these things, I think the way we are sitting here, I think the markets and the streets are factoring or pricing it too fine in terms of the valuations, what they are willing to pay, for the companies. Now, of course, we can always debate that this is a sign of, a developing market, transiting towards a developed market over a longer period of time. But we have to be a little careful in terms of how much have we discounted in terms of all the positive news, and should there be any kind of negative surprise in any of those factors, what are the commensurate risks as well?
Vaibhav, afternoon and season's greetings to you. The question that I really have is, what are you shorting in your hedge fund? There are plenty of long ideas, but what about on the short side? Do you have the conviction to go short?
A tough one actually, Ekta, on this, because while you're looking at a scenario where you can all see positivity around, of course, it's extremely tough to find out the short ideas. Having said that, what we clearly do think is that we are playing this theme, which is global versus domestic, and especially those sectors and stocks which are focused or exposed to the global economy are some things which we are either avoiding or probably going underweight on. Whereas those companies and stock sectors which are domestic in nature, exposed to Indian economy, is something what we would probably want to go long on, at this point in time. So that might continue for some time at least, and that is how we are playing probably on the portfolio on the longer short side.
What would be the long-short ratio, if that's something you look at?
No, of course, I think at this point in time, I would tend to be a little bullish, though not extremely bullish, and probably have our net exposures probably in the long-term average kind of range. So it's not a very big direction we are looking at either ways. We are trying to, we will try to probably wade through this whole thing, in a tight risk management environment, seeing to that the subsequent drawdowns, which if for some reason may come, are probably kind of controlled.
You said avoid global facing. What about metals? Metals typically you say they're global facing, but just your thoughts. We were talking about Hindustan Copper earlier with a colleague. Now that is not really global facing, right? With steel, for example, there's the price influence which happens, and it's a global commodity, etc. Or maybe names like Nalco. I'm not sure if you can talk individual names, but just that space, metals, because a lot of people are making the case that this move is starting. I mean, just about starting now for many of these names.
Yeah, of course, Prashant. I think right observation in the sense that the global narrative, on the metals mining commodity space is starting to build up, in the sense that that China is kind of coming back in terms of their stimulus, their encourage, their support to the whole real estate in terms of their priming their economy. But what we do see is basically this was the same narrative if you go back last December, January, in the fresh new year, there's a lot of optimism around China and how they are going to get their economic back into place. But probably it was too short-lived. We'll wait to see what happens this time around. But in my overall sense, when the global economy is not going to do extremely well and the growth numbers are kind of going to get subdued, it's very rare that you will find any of those kind of commodities kind of beating that path and kind of doing a big rally. Of course, the smaller aspects of, or probably the aspects of spreads getting bottomed out, there is some amount of volume recovery, and you will always see those kind of intermediate kind of rallies happening into the into the space. But on an overall broader view, we do think that it will just be a market performer at best over a period of time.
Okay, got that. So that's the view on some of the global-facing areas and businesses. Vaibhav, we have to ask you about this whole PSU gold rush that has been underway, and really how one navigates that. Because if you tell yourself that stocks have run up too much, and some have gone up 200%, 300%, and if you stay away, you realize that in the next 1 month, perhaps the stocks go up another 50%. So how have you sort of played this? Have you participated? Would you look to book profits now if you're already in, or would you just keep riding it and keep buying more?
The whole PSU basket had a fantastic run, and we do think that in the last 2.5 years, it was a great performance for the whole value segment, if you see. Now, when we talk about value, generally value will continue to remain value until there is a catalyst to drive that value or probably recognize that value. So what we have seen in the last few years, both from a regulatory perspective in terms of policies on supporting, say, something like an area of defense, or probably having those expansion plans in power companies, I think there has been some good movement in terms of a fundamental positivity which has happened in this segment. And that is why the stock prices are reflecting that kind of movement. Of course, if we do think that these stocks are just merely rallying purely because they were just, cheaper in terms of the valuations, but they're still cyclical in nature without any growth plans, I think those are the segments we will sooner get topped out and get differentiated amongst the PSU basket, where growth will be continued to reward. And from a next 1 to 2 year perspective, our larger focus would be on the growth segment rather than the value when the interest rates are kind of starting to come down.
Vaibhav, thank you very much for joining in, and Happy New Year to you and everyone at ASK Hedge Fund, and see you in 2024. Get into a break. On the other side, we'll tell you what dealing rooms are saying in our segment D Street Chatter. We also get you a few BTST calls from our technical experts.
CNBC-TV18 embarking on a quarter.
Thank you for watching CNBC-TV18, and do follow us on all our social media platforms for news, updates and more.